Ukraine President Zelensky is urging the U.S. to respond with action after he says Russia violated the partial ceasefire by damaging his country's energy infrastructure. This as North Korea is sending 3,000 more troops to the Russian front lines. Really? Former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman served in Moscow. One of his stops can tell us what he thinks. So we thought we had an agreement on no energy infrastructure and no hits in the Black Sea. What's happening?
Well, Vladimir Putin will say one thing for media consumption. That's a lot of lies and obfuscation, and it's what he's been doing since he was in the KGB decades ago. And then his army will carry on these attacks because his strategic objective, Brian, continues to be to topple the government of Ukraine, install a puppet regime, and concurrently try to drive a wedge between the United States and Ukraine and between the United States and our European NATO partners.
So we have to make him pay a price if these talks collapse. That would be more sanctions, enforcing the ones in place, and possibly flood Ukraine with even more weapons. There's got to be some type of hell to pay if Russia continues to be insincere to this point and try to do a delay a game with the talks, right?
Yeah, I think all of those policy options are on the table. And look, I was in Hanoi covering the summit there when President Trump walked away from a bad deal with Kim Jong-un. Sometimes you have to do that. And just overnight breaking, Iran wants to negotiate over their nuclear program. So we need to continue to show that we're good, tough negotiators and to ensure that our national security is at the forefront of our policy decisions. That's what the Trump administration is doing, and that's what they need to do in this case. Europe will take the lead on defending their continent at the point of attack, and we can be there supporting them.
Iran last night responded to the president's letter from a few weeks ago and said it's open to indirect nuclear negotiations with the United States, but rejects direct negotiations. So delay a game. We don't have much time to delay. It's going to be a tough decision. So here's what Vladimir Putin said about our plans with Greenland, tongue-in-cheek. We will now allow encroachments on the sovereignty. We will not allow encroachments on the sovereignty of our country and will reliably protect our national interests. What do they have to do with Greenland? Are they talking about Arctic?
Well, Vladimir Putin wants the world to believe that Russia is able to stand toe-to-toe with the United States militarily and diplomatically. So if there's an issue of interest to the United States, Vladimir Putin is just going to weigh in on it because, remember, he's talked about the greatest geopolitical disaster of the last century was the collapse of the Soviet Union. So he harkens back to those days when United States and Soviet leaders would gather and solve the world's problems. That's just not the way it is anymore, but he'd like the world to think it is.
Earlier this week, Vladimir Zelensky, in an interview, I think it was with the Daily Mail, came out and said, don't worry, Vladimir Putin will be dead soon. He sees his mortality in everything he does. What's he building that on?
I don't know that there's any indication that Vladimir Putin's going to be gone anytime soon, but keep in mind that when he is gone, there's no indication that there won't be some other KGB or Russian intelligence officer to take his place. That's why I think we need to make this war more of a loser for Putin than it already has been. Make it clear that imperial land grabs of this sort won't be tolerated and that we and our allies will stand up against them and defend against a violation of a country's territorial integrity and sovereignty.
And lastly, we have a situation with the ongoing negotiations with Ukraine and Russia. You say if we really want to know what Vladimir Putin's thinking, rather than looking at what he's saying, we should go to CIA Director Radcliffe. Why?
Absolutely. Vladimir Putin will obfuscate and lie publicly. He does it all the time. In my experience at CIA, having spent years tracking Putin and trying to see the world through his twisted KGB eyes, we always relied on our human source intelligence and our signals intelligence to understand what Putin's real intentions were and his real plans. And I think that's the key to understanding Russia. Look, Putin lives in a KGB cocoon. He doesn't want us to understand what's going on in his country so that he can lie and obfuscate. But GCI Radcliffe has a great team behind him, and I'm sure the president is asking him every day for all of those secrets about Russia and Putin and his team.
And I think President Trump's eyes are wide open. He was asked, what about Russia? Are they trying to just delay these talks and string him out? He said he might be. Okay? We'll see. In other words, my eyes are open. I'm not going to wait too much longer. Dan Hoffman, thanks so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.